All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I guess we will get started since it's right at 2 o'clock. My name is Ravi Mynampaty. I'm here with my coworker, Katia Muser. Both of us work at Harvard Business School. And today, this talk is a case study of how we used Solr in our organization. And Katia will speak a little bit about this later, but it's also something that Will Hayes spoke about in his opening remarks when he said how search can be an app killer. And this is a bit of a use case of that as well. So Katia works as technical solution architect at HBS. As you can see, she's a big FIFA World Cup fan. Once the US MNT was eliminated, she was cheering for this team, which is also red, white, and blue, right? And me, I work as a software developer. I like playing with search engines. And I'm so glad to be at this conference where there's a lot of new information to learn, and I'm still very much a student. So what is this session about? It's basically how we added Kool-Aid to the water supply at HBS, and how Solr is basically taking over the enterprise search landscape. And how we basically started off, and where we are right now, and what the future looks like. So just a brief roadmap. It is So we'll cover the roadmap, and Katia will talk about the architecture, and we also have a demo. But just to avoid the vagaries of the internet, I think it's a screencast, basically. Right? Anything to add to that, Katia?
That's great.
Okay. So when did this begin? So back in 2012, when President Obama was being reelected, we were tasked with re-implementing the Alumni website at Harvard Business School. So this is a screenshot of what it looked like back in 2012. It's a pretty good website. It had various sections, such as on the left side, content coming from an in-house web publishing system that was showing its age. And down in the middle and to the right, we talk about the alumni class notes, which, as many of you know, is it's like alumni posting notes about themselves so that they can broadcast information about themselves to their classmates. Things like, oh, I just founded a new company, or we just had 2 children, or so on and so forth. And that data was actually coming from 2 different repositories. One was actually just a bunch of static HTML files, and the other one was a database-driven Java app. But it was sort of artificially on the user interface bundled into one element in this user interface. And we were tasked with actually building something like this, which is actually a screenshot of our current alumni website. And it has pretty much the same content buckets, but 1 or 2 new ones. So on the left-hand side, what we're saying is that we wanted to migrate off of our old web publishing system and to our content management system, the standard one that we have, which happens to be SharePoint WCM. And on the top right-hand side, you see so-called alumni activity or community news. If an alumnus has posted stories about himself or herself, they would appear in that stream. It's updated on a pretty regular basis. And on the bottom right-hand side, there's a class notes repository, which comes from a single repository now. And the main reason why alumni come to our website, based on analytics, is for the people directory, for the alumni people directory. And so we have a more modern look and feel and an updated people directory. So the old people directory was built on Endeca, and the new one on Solr. But there's more to this than just a slide, but we will look at it. So when we were tasked with, initially we were tasked with replacing the Endeca-driven people directory. And like any mid-sized company, we have more than one search engine in our enterprise. Certainly Endeca. We also have a fast search for SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2010 search. I also had a really nifty web search engine called UltraSeek, which is pretty ancient, but I love it. It does the job really well. And into this mix, because we had been playing with Solr and Lucidworks, we threw that one into the mix as well. We went through a business and technical requirements gathering process and evaluation process. We matched up the technology against the requirements and checked off, does it meet this requirement? This one does not meet the requirement. We built some prototypes in order to validate our requirements gathering and also whether the tools could satisfy our needs. By the way, the slides will be available for download later as well, so feel free to take pictures or notes as you please. So finally, based on the requirements gathering process and the POCs that we built, the tool of choice was Lucidworks Solr. And here I'm giving myself a pat on the back. I saw this coming back in 2010. So if you look on the date on this email I sent to my coworkers, when I first downloaded Lucidworks Solr, December of 2010, I sent out this email. I said, this is the greatest software. And I saw it replacing many other tools that we have on campus. And in fact, that is exactly what came true. So now we will cover the architecture, and I hand it over to Katia.
Boiling over frogs. I hope it's not personal, Ravi. Anyway, so I'm just going to go over our actual architecture and how we made it happen. So as Ravi stated, we have a SharePoint WCM environment for all the authoring of every single articles within the website. And we started looking at how to do the directory search. So basically, we created Solr collection, Solr cores, with all the information about all the alumni. We have about 100,000 alumni within Harvard Business School. So for that, we realized the value, the faceting. A lot of our alumni wants to be able to search based on facets, based on a lot of different criterias, and also geolocation is another one that we added to the mix with Solr. Because Solr doesn't have authentication or authorization, we created a alumni search service wrapper. It's a Java application that serves as a proxy, handles all authentication, and makes sure that for the specific core that you're going to get access to, you actually have the role necessary to get access to it. So that's really provided a good authorization based on collection. It also handles authorization based on document. So it also filters out some content based on your role. We use for that Lucidworks ACL, access control. And so we pass on to the query, we add on that specific flag to filter out the documents that you're not allowed to see. As we continued, we started using it also for the story navigation. So the whole portal, the whole navigation is based on Solr. It enabled us to do some personalization based on the alumni logged in, what kind of interests that they had. And so it would filter out, and push to the top their articles that are more relevant to them. We also, we're using a third-party system for event management, so we have feeds coming from the Cvent application. And for that, we also indexed all our events from the website and also from the database to be able to navigate to them. And based on who you are, you're going to have a different view. If you're an alumni, you're going to have more events than if you're non-authenticated. You also can have access to the website. And then class notes, as Ravi mentioned, same thing. The interest of alumni is also to read about their peers. So when they log into the class notes application based on their own program, class year, section, they're going to have a different experience and see the class notes. As we started developing all this, we realized also that we could use it, as Ravi stated, as the app killer, where we would have had a tendency to write a custom Java application before to do specifically the community news. So community news is an activity stream that shows everything an alumni, all the activities alumni are having. So either they post something on the website, or they were mentioned in the class notes, mentioned in the story, they've updated their profile information, and all this bubbles up. Again, when an alumni goes to the community section, based on their class year, program that they graduated from, section, they would have a different view that's catered to them. They can also search anybody else, but I mean, just by default, they would have a personalized. So that's for, this is for, yeah, community. So that really helped us out and saved a lot of development. From a architecture, from data, this is, I mean, we had a lot of, there's a lot of talks in the conference of really big data. This is more of human size. Our biggest collections are about 500,000 cores. So the architecture that we have, because at the time Solar Cloud was not completely ready, we used a master slave. So we had one master and two slaves for this infrastructure. And we have all these collections of cores in there. So I'm going to go back one more. The community news, I just want to add the data that we are rendering in the activity streams comes from many different sources. The first one is the database. So as an alumni goes and updates their profile information, it updates an Oracle database, and we have log tables where we logged all the activities, and for that we crawl them and add them to the collection. So we crawl directly the database. We also have class notes, a lot of mentions of the class notes. For that, we generated Solr XML for feeds, and then we crawled them. And these happen maybe every 3 months. The class notes are published every 3 months, so it wasn't something that needed a regular schedule. We do that one manually. And also, we also have to index content from WCM articles. For that, we created crawl pages. So when one of our webmaster authors any article, they're going to put some metadata in there, specific ones. And so we create these crawl pages with that metadata so that can be easily indexed. So this is one example of the crawl pages that we have. And that's pretty standard HTML crawl. We also did, we also did Solr XML. So this is also another sample that we have here for the activity streams. And then we created a Java application specifically for the database crawling. We've been using Lucidworks, but at the time, the data import handler that the version we were using was, we wanted to be more efficient, so we ended up writing our own Java for that, so that it would crawl the database. So it's a generic Java loader, and with a configuration file, you would, oops, sorry, wrong button. You would just specify what query or nested queries that you wanted in your delta. And based, we run this on a cron job every 5 minutes to update, or depending on the collection. They all have different schedules. But so we just created this one Java loader, and then we reuse it across the board with different configuration files and cron. So this is, basically the Java to whether you want to run a full clean, because sometimes we do full cleans on a schedule every week, or if you're looking to do just a full crawl, or if you're looking to run the delta. Deltas are run quite often to keep the data fresh.
Okay, I can manage this. It's fine. So let's just jump back to the roadmap before the exciting part, which is the demo. So back in 2013, as the Red Sox were on their way to winning a third World Series title in 10 years, that's when we launched the new Alumni website. We were pretty excited about that.
There's nobody from New York, is
there? Yeah, hopefully no Yankees fans here, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about 2014. Back earlier this year, certainly Katia and I were watching a lot of FIFA, and probably many of you as well. Yeah. And we took advantage of Jürgen Klinsmann's free pass also to watch it. And so when this was happening, we made some additional incremental improvements to the way we were implementing things. And to give you a couple of examples, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, a lot of search problems are really content or data problems. And
We hear it so often from Ravi. It's always the data. It's never the search.
It's never the search engine. That's right. So this is an example. In our database, we had many variations of company names, whereas in our, we'd like to really use one preferred name. So in this case, Apple, we had like 10 to 12 different variations. This is because the data was coming from various places. Alumni were entering it as in a couple of different systems. And obviously, we don't, it's not optimal to present such facets to the end user, because really they all are the same company. And there are, of course, many ways of dealing with this, and there was a presentation yesterday where a gentleman, he did it in using some sort of machine learning approach. And obviously, also, we'd like to clean it up in the source data. That would be great as well. But the issue we had with that was that the feeds were coming in from an external entity to HPS, so we did not have control. So any changes we made would be overridden anyway. And we could also clean it up in the user interface, which is not really the most efficient. So a compromise that we had to make was actually at least clean it up in the search index. And the way we did that was, we basically mapped variant forms of a company name to a preferred form. And we were able to, at least in the end user interface, present a single facet. So on the left-hand side, you see various facet counts for variations of Apple Inc. and Apple, Inc., Apple Computer Incorporated. And on the right-hand side in the facet, there's a display to the end user. There's only one preferred form displayed. And how did we do this? We used the Lucidworks business rules module. As you can see, the code in the black background is just, it's a rules-based rules engine that came with the version of Lucidworks that we have. I'm not sure if that's there in Fusion or not. That's something that. Okay, cool. But this was not really that much code. And on the right-hand side in green, that's the mapping file, which maps the variant forms of the company name to a preferred form. So this is the approach we took to accomplish that. Sorry.
You can also have your own mapping file.
I'm sorry, say.
You can also have your own mapping file.
Yes, that's mapping file. We created the mapping file. So we have librarians working. Oh, the question was that you can have your own mapping file to accomplish that, and that's exactly what we did. We have metadata and taxonomy experts and librarians. So they looked at our data, and they actually suggested what our preferred company name would be for the top variations. And we haven't yet done the big data cleanup by looking at standard company lists and doing this in an automated fashion.
What I'm saying, why do you need Lucidworks? Because actually, when you create an XML, you can just make it in keyboard.
I think the business rules was, the question was why use Lucidworks business rules? Yes, as I said, there are many approaches to doing this, and this is the approach we took. And that's a great suggestion as well. Point taken. And also this year, we used Solr's geolocation features to build a mapping functionality on the alumni directory. And so basically what happened was that once we were successfully proved out the Solr approach worked on the alumni website, stakeholders of other content, other web properties basically said, oh, we want a piece of that. So we basically made more websites drink the Solr Kool-Aid, and such as the Executive Education Program Finder, the Chinese version of the Executive Education Program Finder. These are actually public websites, so you can go play with them, and others as well. So just quickly looking ahead before we go to the demo. So this year we want to eliminate the crawl page approach. We don't want to, because that is a little bit inefficient in terms of sending out the web crawler to crawl these HTML pages, putting some additional load on our web servers, and it slows things down a little bit as well. And in sorry, you have
push data instead, right? Whenever whenever the webmaster updates a page, instead of generating crawl, we're just going to push and call the API to update the collection. It's much more streamlined and better.
That's right. And the early part of next year, we look to, so we're not like an e-commerce company. We don't have a ton of queries per second, but we tend to have more load on the indexing side. And we just want to, because of the expanding need for Solr in the environment, in our enterprise, we are going to beef up the infrastructure, specifically the indexing piece, and also put it in a disaster recovery mode. And this is a long-standing dream of ours. They actually just present a unified search results interface. So right now, our website search is still driven by UltraSeek. And we have prototypes of all of HPS web content being indexed by Solr. And we hope to launch this sometime in early 2015. And as a demo, back to Katia. It's at 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Great. So this is just recording that we made. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Play it.
So this is the actual alumni website. So this is the homepage. You have a directory search, events and reunion. This is all powered by Solr. This navigation of what's going on? What's going on? So you have all these different. So we created all these RESTful web services that are being called from all the different web parts. So as you go to stories section, and you can go. It's publicly available. You'll see on the left-hand side all the facets for all the different stories. So, like I mentioned earlier, the whole navigation is based on Solr, all the faceting and there. So we have a lot of different facets. Moving ahead to the community. This is the protected area of the website. I had to blur everything because these are actual people using it. So we have, you see, there's a lot of activities going on because we started integrating with LinkedIn. So a lot of people are starting to sync their alumni profile with their LinkedIn on the website. And so obviously we have autocomplete in there. So you can search for different, right now I'm doing a search all. It's a search all, so it's going to search for the names, and you can see matched on name, company name. The person has named Bloomberg and is working at Bloomberg, basically. And then so a lot of different facets, you can drill down however you want. And you can also search by location. So in this case, we had a use case where we have an alumni that's at an airport, and they want to know where their other alumni are located close to the airport. So they can type in the code of the airport, LAX, and then they get everybody around, and they can drill down and see. So we're using Google API to get the geolocation codes. So it tells us whether or not it's accurate, or it's approximate location code. So it's also specified, and we have business or home address being shown there. And this is just to show you a visual of the class notes area, where we can also drill down and search. There's more features, but just a quick overview of the website. So if anybody has any questions, or... I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, the question, do we completely know SharePoint? We're still using it as a WCM. So we're still authoring. We have the auth environment where our webmasters is creating. But this is just to create the content, the navigation, personalization, everything around it is all through web services, RESTful web services calls. So to the Solr. You had a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes?
When you were evaluating architectural alternatives, what was it that caused you to move away from the use of a web content manager, to this sort of Solr-driven approach? That built portals for even pure web type solutions.
So the question was, why did we go and use WCM SharePoint versus continuing with what we're... Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. We actually had an in-house already team that were highly knowledgeable in the SharePoint WCM, and that was the direction they wanted all the websites to move towards. So that we did not evaluate for this project other alternatives. That makes sense. Yes, Joel?
So the question was when we looked at the variant names of the company name Apple, how did we evaluate what the variations were? Did we do it manually or did we use other tools? So the answer is it was done manually. We looked at the most, well, I shouldn't say me personally, but we have information scientists, and they maintain some control lists of company names, and they evaluated the most egregious cases, that I think the top 20 or 25 companies which had the most variance, and they suggested what the preferred form should be, and that's how we mapped it. But they may be like a.
But they use the facets, right? The results to do this analysis, or?
No, they looked at the back end, the database. Yes, exactly. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
we have these things.
Yes. Yes. Question.
When you use the Solr for this drive this website, did you face what kind of challenges?
So the question is, what challenges we faced when we started using Solr for this project?
I can add one. Well, the first one was the authorization piece, so that it's not protected. All those RESTful services were not protected, but that's how we created the search wrapper for that specific reason. And all the Solr cores are IP protected. Nobody can access them. That was, I think, our biggest challenge, and that's why we created this item. Did you have?
No, that's a great example.
Of the functionality, you all the functionality you need, all provide, all can be, you can find all the functionality from Solr.
I think all the functionality the project needed, it was,
We got.
right, the question was, did Solr provide all the functionality we needed? And I think the answer is pretty much yes.
For all the requirements that we had, yeah.
Yeah.
They were met. Yeah. Any other question?
Is your indexing pretty fast with using Oracle DB, like basically a relational database? Or
Yeah.
relational one?
So the question is, how fast is the querying part? So what I forgot to mention is, in order to create all these, to crawl all these Oracle database, we created views that kind of put the data flat, and we try to avoid as much as possible too many nested queries. And then when we needed to optimize a little bit more, we had to create some materials tables, so that, because the views were so complex, we ended up creating materials tables that we refreshed on a regular basis. I think you had is that answer?
Someone else had a question?
You had a question?
So how many requirements did you have? And I think maybe related to another question, what drove you away from using like Microsoft Fast, which is sort of integrated with SharePoint?
So the question is, how many requirements did we have? And second part was, what drove us away from other solutions, such as Microsoft Fast for SharePoint 2010? The first one is, I think that was a sample spreadsheet as I showed you, and that had probably like 50 or 60 rows, but they were in various categories. Some of them were user interface requirements, some of them were like business requirements, and some of them were from a technical standpoint, how easy to, like, for me personally, actually, this segues into your second question, which is, a previous website before Katia joined HPS, we actually implemented in Fast, using Fast for SharePoint 2010, and that was a little bit, frankly, a traumatic experience for me. Again, speaking from my personal perspective, I would have some repressed memories, such as, for example, I couldn't get quoted queries to work properly, and also just getting searches to work across fields in a multi-valued fields. Yeah, exactly, and sometimes just, so those were a couple of issues.
And the data was not just in SharePoint. I mean, we had in databases from a lot of different feeds. So, starting from any, are we good on time?
We have 2 minutes, but I think we should mention that we do have some surprises. Katia, I wanted to bribe people in the beginning, but she said no. We do have some surprises for people who ask questions. Lucidworks employees and former Lucidworks employees are not eligible. But if you ask a question, please come up, and we have like a shot glass and HPS swag and bottle and umbrellas. But if there's, are we out of time?
We
We are out of time.
Okay.
So please come and claim your gift. Thank you very much.
We have 4, so the first 4.
Yeah. 4 gifts. We have 4 gifts. Thank you.